Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Admiral, for your service and for being with us today. This has been most interesting. I'm going to drill down maybe a little bit on some of the things that related to the allies and their trust in us, and how we build a stronger alliance of free people that are concerned about China. And I don't think there's any question China is the topic of the day in lots of places, not just here. But I also know that a lot of these matters get out there on the fringe a little bit, sometimes things we may not think about. So I want to ask you specifically about, there was a recent Reuters story that said Iran has quietly moved record amounts of crude oil to its top client, of course, China, in recent months. At the same time, India's state refiners have added Iranian oil to their annual import plans on the assumption that the United States is going to lift their sanctions. Does Indo-PACOM, do you guys track Iranian oil shipments within your area of responsibility? And if so, does that information get back to the Pentagon, the White House? Decision makers are making lots of big decisions about things domestically and around the world that might have an impact on our relationships.
Yeah, certainly, Senator. We track the Iranian transshipment of oil across the theater. You know, the interactions with China, you know, are indicative of China's willingness to ignore sanctions and international norms to do that kind of thing.
But with regard to India, then, do you see a risk if we, lift the sanctions on Iran, that they're able to now sell oil to an important ally, very much in the region? I'm just again thinking about all of the relationships and all the factors that enter into the relationship. And I know I'm asking you now to probably opine on a policy question as opposed to whether or not you're tracking it. But it seems to me that these decisions of things like lifting sanctions on Iran could have ramifications that we maybe haven't thought of yet. If you want to comment, you can. Otherwise, I can move on.
No, sir, it is an important policy issue for the United States. Iran is no doubt a net exporter of oil, and it'll have to be considered.
Thank you. I want to follow up on the line of questioning that Senator Fisher asked as well about ISR and the importance of it, and I'll probably just skip some of the easy stuff that she was asking about. Easy for me, not necessarily for you. Just ask this, adding on to her line of question, do you think that the sale of ISR platforms to allies in the region might help our ISR needs in the region? In other words, I know there have been some restrictions, there's some sales pending, I know a lot of desire by both allies and some of our American contractors. Could we help the ISR picture a little bit by opening up sales, maybe speeding them up a little bit to allies in the region?
It depends on, I would say it depends on some of the exact capabilities that we're talking about, but I will tell you broadly, we share information with our allies in the region and many, many partners. They benefit from the information that we generate. I can tell you in the East China Sea and the South China Sea, we, the United States, benefit from much of what our allies and partners do there as well. So it would certainly add capacity to the picture. And as we deepen our information sharing agreements, which is dependent on a lot of factors, we will share that information amongst us. It's going to make us better.
I don't know if you're hearing me, but I stopped hearing you suddenly. So I'll ask one more question in case you are listening and can hear it. And it's a pretty basic one. Do you consider China a developing country or developed country? And that's something a question I've just started exploring. And what's the difference, whether we consider it developing or developed?
Sir, I imagine economists, have a standard for that description. I mean, certainly they've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty just since the turn of the century. But I would say that they still have hundreds of millions to go. But I'd have to defer to an economist to give you the exact characterization.
Yeah, and you're right. There are some standards that economists use relating to, gross versus net and all these economic points. They're relevant, don't get me wrong. What I'm more concerned about is how the rest of the world treats a developing nation versus a developed nation. And I guess I would submit to you, whether they're considered developed or in transition, They are, as the chairman said in his opening comments, an emerging threat and a near peer ally prepared for some pretty serious confrontation. So anyway, all of that said, again, thank you for your service and thank you for being with us today. And I see my time's up, Mr. Chairman.